The police showed up at my door at 7 a.m. with a trespassing complaint. The HOA president stood behind them, arms crossed, smiling. There was just one problem: I wasn't part of their HOA. I owned my home free and clear. What happened next will blow your mind, because this Karen wasn't going to stop until I was gone. And the reason why? You won't believe it until the end of this story. But before we get into this insanity, if you love watching entitled people get what they deserve, smash that subscribe button because this story gets wild. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. After years of saving, my wife Sarah and I finally found our dream home. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman-style house on Maple Street. The best part? The listing specifically said, not part of HOA. We'd heard the horror stories. HOAs fining people for the wrong shade of mailbox. HOAs demanding you remove your kid's basketball hoop. HOAs turning neighbors into surveillance agents. We wanted none of that. Our real estate agent, Tom, made it crystal clear. This property was built before the HOA was established, he said. You're grandfathered out. Completely independent. We had it in writing. The title search confirmed it. Our lawyer confirmed it. We closed on the house in March, and we were thrilled. The house was in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets. Our immediate neighbors, the Johnsons on the left and the Patel family on the right, were friendly and welcoming. Life was perfect. For exactly 3 weeks. Her name was Margaret Stillwater, and she was the HOA president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association. I first met her on a Saturday morning. I was outside planting roses in my front yard, on MY property, when I heard a sharp voice behind me. Excuse me. I turned around to see a woman in her early 60s, blonde hair in a severe bob, wearing a beige pantsuit like she was about to foreclose on someone's farm. She held a clipboard. Always a bad sign. Can I help you? I asked, wiping dirt off my hands. I'm Margaret Stillwater, president of the Maple Grove HOA, she said, like she was announcing herself as Queen of England. I'm here about your landscaping. I blinked. My landscaping? Those roses, she said, pointing at the flowers I'd literally just put in the ground. They're not on the approved plant list. Section 7, subsection C of our HOA guidelines. Only native, drought-resistant plants are permitted in front yards. I stood up slowly. I appreciate the information, but I'm not part of the HOA. Her face tightened. Everyone on Maple Street is part of the HOA. Not me, I said calmly. My property predates the HOA. It's in my title documents. Margaret's smile was ice cold. We'll see about that. And then she walked away. I should have known right then this wasn't over. Over the next 2 weeks, things escalated fast. First, I got a letter in the mail. Official HOA letterhead. It claimed I owed $2,400 in back dues for the past year, plus a $500 landscaping violation fee. I called the number on the letter. Margaret answered. I'm not paying this, I said. I'm not in the HOA. Mr. Torres, she said. Yes, that's my name, Daniel Torres. Records show your property at 447, Maple Street falls within HOA boundaries. Payment is due within 15 days or we'll place a lien on your home. A lien. On MY home. That I owned. I contacted my lawyer immediately. He sent them a cease and desist letter with copies of my title documents proving I wasn't part of the HOA. Margaret responded by sending me more letters. Now I was supposedly violating paint color codes. My car was parked improperly, in my own driveway. My trash cans were visible from the street on non-trash days. Every single day, there was something new. Then came the inspection. I came home from work one Tuesday to find Margaret and 2 other HOA board members in my backyard. Taking photos. Measuring things with a tape measure. What are you doing on my property? I shouted. HOA inspection, Margaret said casually. We have the right to inspect all properties for code violations. You're trespassing, I said. Get out before I call the police. Margaret just smiled that cold smile again. We're well within our rights. See you at the hearing. What hearing? What was she talking about? 2 days later, I got a certified letter about an emergency HOA hearing regarding my multiple violations and refusal to comply with community standards. My lawyer told me I didn't have to go. You're not a member. This is harassment. We should file a restraining order. But I wanted to face them. I wanted to make it clear, in front of witnesses, that they had no authority over me. The hearing was held at the community center. When I walked in, there were about 30 people there, HOA board members and busybody neighbors. Margaret sat at the head of the table like a judge. Mr. Torres, she began, you've been summoned here to address your continued violations of HOA code and your refusal to pay dues. I pulled out my documents. I'm not a member of this HOA. My property predates the HOA's establishment. Here's my title. Here's my deed. Here's a letter from my attorney. You have no jurisdiction over my property. Margaret didn't even look at the papers. The HOA boundaries were redrawn in 2019, she said. Your property now falls within our jurisdiction. You can dispute this in court, but until then, you're bound by our rules. Wait, what? You can't just redraw boundaries and force people into an HOA. I said. Actually, said a weaselly little man next to Margaret, the HOA treasurer, I later learned, we can expand to include adjacent properties with a majority board vote. This was insane. This was illegal. I'm not paying you a single cent, I said. And if any of you step foot on my property again, I'm pressing charges. Margaret leaned forward. Then we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. And report you to the authorities for trespassing on HOA common areas. I don't use your common areas. Your property shares a fence line with our community park, she said. That makes you a trespasser. I walked out. I was shaking with anger. But here's where it gets really crazy. 3 days later, 7 a.m. on a Monday morning, there's loud banging on my door. I stumbled downstairs in my pajamas. Through the peephole, I saw 2 police officers. My heart dropped. I opened the door. Officers? What's going on? Are you Daniel Torres? The older cop asked. Yes. We received a report that you're trespassing on private HOA property. We need to verify your residency. I was confused. Trespassing? I live here. This is my house. Behind the officers, standing on the sidewalk with that same smug smile, was Margaret. Officers, she called out, this man has been repeatedly told he's illegally occupying property within HOA boundaries. He's refused to leave or pay dues. We've tried to resolve this civilly. The younger cop looked uncomfortable. Sir, do you have proof you own this property? Of course I do. I said. Hold on. I grabbed my deed, my mortgage papers, my title insurance, everything. I showed it to the officers. The older cop reviewed the documents and frowned. He walked over to Margaret. Ma'am, these documents clearly show he owns this property. What's the issue here? The HOA has jurisdiction over this property, Margaret insisted. He's in violation of multiple codes and refuses to pay dues. He's essentially squatting on HOA land. The cop looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Ma'am, he owns the house. He's not squatting. This isn't a criminal matter. This is a civil dispute. You need to handle this through the courts, not by calling 911. Margaret's face turned red. This is an emergency. Ma'am, the cop said firmly, filing false police reports is a crime. If you call us out here again for something like this, we'll have to take action. The officers apologized to me and left. Margaret stood on the sidewalk, furious. This isn't over, she hissed. Oh, but it was over. Just not the way she expected. After the police incident, I was done playing defense. I hired a real estate attorney who specialized in property law. Her name was Patricia Nguyen, and she was a shark. Patricia did a deep dive into the HOA's claims. And what she found was stunning. First, the HOA's boundary expansion in 2019. Totally illegal. You can't just vote to include someone else's property in your HOA. That requires consent from the property owner and formal legal proceedings. Second, the HOA had been trying this with 3 other non-HOA homes in the neighborhood. They'd successfully bullied one family into paying dues just to avoid harassment. Third, and this is where it gets wild, Patricia discovered why Margaret was so obsessed with my property specifically. The HOA was broke. They'd mismanaged their budget for years. They'd spent hundreds of thousands on a fancy new clubhouse that almost nobody used. They were facing a $150,000 shortfall and possible bankruptcy. Margaret's solution? Force non-HOA homes to join and pay dues. My property, with its large lot and prime location, would be worth substantial dues and assessments. But here's the kicker, Margaret had a personal reason too. She'd wanted to buy my house when it was on the market. She'd made an offer that was lowballed and rejected. Now she wanted to make my life so miserable that I'd sell, probably to her or someone she knew, at a loss. This was personal revenge disguised as HOA enforcement. Patricia was furious. We're going to bury them, she said. Patricia filed a lawsuit against the HOA for harassment, trespassing, defamation, and attempted fraud. We also filed complaints with the police about the false report and with the State Real Estate Commission about the HOA's illegal practices. The discovery phase was glorious. Emails between Margaret and other board members revealed their scheme to force non-HOA homes to join. There were discussions about making life difficult for us until we caved. When it became clear they were going to lose badly, the HOA's insurance company forced them to settle. The terms, a formal letter admitting I was never part of the HOA and never would be. $25,000 in damages paid to me. Margaret Stillwater removed as HOA president. A restraining order preventing any HOA member from contacting me or entering my property. The HOA was forced to send a letter to all residents clarifying which properties were actually part of the HOA and apologizing for administrative errors. Margaret quietly moved away 6 months later. Here's what I learned, HOAs can be great for some people, but when they're run by power-hungry tyrants, they become nightmares. Know your property rights. Get everything in writing. And if an HOA tries to bully you, don't back down. They're counting on you being too tired or scared to fight back. My roses? Still blooming beautifully in my front yard. And nobody can do a damn thing about it. If this story made you angry, hit that like button. If you've dealt with HOA horror stories, drop them in the comments below. And subscribe for more stories about people getting the justice they deserve. Thanks for watching, and remember, not all heroes wear capes. Some just plant roses and refuse to back down.